Hello everybody, I'm GWReborn. I have a quick video today to discuss what's the best secondary profession to choose for each profession. There's 10 professions total, and before I start, just want to say that this is not the most optimal suggestion or route, but this is a good reference or guide, especially for new players. And also keep in mind that this profession change will depend on what character you use and what realm, meaning if you create a prophecies, factions, or nightfall character, the second professions can vary, such as in factions you can have ritualist and assassin, while you can't do that in prophecies, and vice versa with Paragon and Dervish in nightfall. So if y'all have any questions about this or in general in Guild Wars, feel free to comment and ask. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm chilling over here in the login screen for character selection next to a fire. Start off with the monk. So depending on what your outcome is for these results is going to matter. So if you want to do speed clears, then I'll pretty much the best route. Otherwise, it's going to be all personal preference. But for speed clear realm, especially in a monk, you're going to be using the elementus as your secondary role or ranger. Ranger would use a specific skill like serpent's quickness for UA, serpent's quickness seed spammer. And then if you run assassin as secondary for PvP, the reason that is because a lot of people in PvP as a monk use assassin secondary for like dark escape and dash and other jump skills to get away from your targets for the monk. So I would recommend going either elementus for glyph of renewal, the energy management skill within the elementus, a ranger for serpent's quickness UA seed, or the assassin for PvP. Next one on the list is the Necro. A lot of people normally go Mesmer secondary for Necro because you can use Arcane Echo really quickly up in the beginning of the start of the Necro creation for echoing your elites or any spells that are doing critical damage, such as Spiteful Spirit, the elite skill. So Arcane Echo is going to be pretty critical for Mesmer secondary for the Necro role. Now for Ranger, highly recommend doing Ritualist as your secondary role. A lot of people use Ranger with Ritualist secondary for Barrage Splinter, as a lot of people would call it. That way you can use Splinter and hit up to 6 targets with your Splinter weapon using a bow. So that's pretty critical damage. So Ritualist would be a good second profession for the Ranger. Now for the Ritualist. Ritualist, there's really not going to need any primary second profession because majority of your spells are going to be all Ritualist spells. But if I was to choose a particular second profession, I would go with the monk because you could take a res skill as well as heal support as a ritualist monk. So if you were to choose to do restoration spirit support, you could put 2 or 3 monk healing spells in there or prop skills. So that would be a good one for a writ. Next one is the dervish. A lot of people go warrior for the second profession for dervish because they have 1 or 2 strikes you can use on the warrior second profession, but in general, 90% of your skills you're going to use on the warrior are also going to be, the dervish are going to be only dervish spells or skills and enchantments. So you really aren't going to really matter which profession you choose. But if you do decide to choose, I'd say warrior would be a good second profession for the dervish. Next one would be the assassin. So a lot of people in the assassin realm, when they start off, you're going to use majority of just assassin spells. But if you're a noob starting off in like factions when you create this profession, a lot of people recommend going for monk secondary because you can take some heal support spells in there with your assassin, such as life vigorousy and vigorous spirit. Some good heal supports with dagger damage does really well. Some people also recommend Mesmer secondary profession as well because you can use Arcane Echo just like I mentioned earlier with the Mesmer for some of the deadly spells that you can use for dagger mastery and pretty much spellcasting spells you can use in deadly arts of an assassin. Next on the list is a warrior. Warrior is pretty low energy management profession, so it's really going to vary on what you want to do. I normally went monk secondary for this one, the same as the assassin concept, using vigorous spirit as some heal support, or even a warrior. They call them back in the day WAMOs, WAMMO, warrior monks, because you have that heal support damage, or you can use healing hands as your elite skill for healing yourself as you can tank as a warrior. So monk is a good second profession for warrior. Next on the list is the Elementist, or Elementalist, however you pronounce it. For Elementist, I normally would put a as my second profession is a Mesmer because I like to use Arcane Echo for a lot of the skills that Elementists do potentially for damage. So a Mesmer would be a good second role or Monk, depending on if you're planning on going into emo bonding for the Elementist role. Next one is the Mesmer. So the Mesmer is pretty critical for damage. A lot of people are normally using Necro secondary as well as assassin secondary, depending on some of the dungeons and speed clears you do. But in general, just starting off in PvE as a Mesmer, the damage roll isn't going to matter too much because majority of your damage will be on a Mesmer. But I would highly recommend either assassin or Necro. In there for Necro, you can use Necrosis as a really good single damage target skill, and assassin is more for the realm of if you're trying to add in recall and some of the other assassin spells that people use for jumping forward or as well as getting away from their target, such as in PvP, just like I mentioned with the monk. I don't have a profession for Paragon on here, but for Paragon, everybody knows Embagon for Paragon, so go ahead and make Warrior the secondary for the Paragon. Warrior for Embagon. And all of the builds I brought up in a lot of different concepts can all be found on Guild Wars Wiki or FBGM site, as well as you can just ask for builds. I'll also make videos on the builds. And keep in mind that this secondary profession thing is not going to matter at all when it comes to you finishing the game, because you can change into all 10 professions, and then once you pay your fee, here I'll go ahead and show that, once you pay your fee for each profession, you won't even have to worry about, alright, well, do I need to pay again? So once you get Ascension, you can go to Great Temple of Balthazar here, and this is where you can get your secondary profession changer. So you can change into any of your professions from this location once you get ascended in Prophecies, Nightfall, or Factions for Ascension. So it says right here, profession changer. So keep in mind that this is just a reference or guide and not the most optimal routes. So you can change into any of your professions here, and it's going to cost you 500 gold per. So it's really going to vary on what profession you choose. At the beginning, it's not going to matter afterward. But until then, that's all I got. Any questions y'all have, feel free to ask. This is just reference for some guys. Somebody asked me to make a video on it, so I figured why not. So, good luck.